Whether techniques have remained the same for hundreds of years or evolved as they spread to artisans around the world, art can reflect a place's unique history, traditions, and culture. And in many cases, it's pretty satisfying to watch. Here are 16 satisfying art techniques from around the world. In Turkey, Ebru is a traditional art where colorful paint is sprinkled onto a pan of an oily mixture made of water and carrageenan. The paint is manipulated with a metal rod to create a design. After that, the design is transferred to paper. Here, artist Garip Ai used the technique to recreate Van Gogh's Starry Night. A traditional Japanese technique, suminigashi, or floating ink, also uses ink and water to create marbling on plain paper. Carpet weaving has been around for thousands of years in Armenia and throughout the Middle East. Armenian weavers use a traditional double knot technique and dye the wool with organic ingredients from the country's highlands. It can take up to a year and a half to complete just one rug. Over in Iran, a similar process is used to hand weave Persian rugs. One rug can often take years and sometimes decades to create. Though there are many varieties of Persian carpets, each distinguished by their materials, patterns, and weaving techniques, every Persian rug is regarded as a piece of art that reflects the history and culture of Iran. In Japan, amezaiku is an art where delicate sculptures of animals, birds, and fish are handcrafted out of sugar to create edible candy art. It's said to have started during the Heian period in the 8th century to be used as offerings at temples in Kyoto. Today, few professional amezaiku craftspeople exist in Japan. Nerikomi is a Japanese form of clay marbling. Here, artist Risa Nishimori stains porcelain with non-traditional colors and layers them together to form patterned blocks. Then she cuts through the block with a wire to reveal the final design. Finally, she shapes the clay to create a functional ceramic. While tattoos are generally condemned in Japanese culture, the traditional method of tebori has been practiced in Japan for centuries. A tattoo artist, or horishi, uses a long rod that plunges into the skin with sharp needles, rhythmically working the ink in. It can be a way for clients to connect to the past, but in modern Japan, they often must hide their tattoos in public because of the stigma. The technique has been adopted around the world, but only a few traditional tebori artists are left in Japan. In Vietnam, senmai is a traditional form of lacquer painting that is created using a toxic lacquer exclusively harvested from one region of the country. It requires months of application and sanding back layers of paint to build up the image, which can turn out completely different than what the artist had originally intended because of the unpredictable nature of the process. In South Asia, Carom is an indoor tabletop game that has millions of fans, and the game's layout is an art form. The game board is crafted by hand from large slabs of wood that have been dried for 6 months to ensure the board's preservation. Then the game layout is either screen printed or hand painted with ink and watercolors. The game is similar to pool, but instead of a cue stick, there is a striker. And instead of balls, there are small wooden or plastic discs. The goal is to get rid of all the discs. While the game is said to have originated in India in the 18th century, it has international appeal. In India, Rogan art is a centuries-old craft that has been in Abdul Ghaffur Khatri's family for 8 generations. The family says that they are the only Rogan artists left in the world. The paint is made of pigments and castor oil, which is heated for 2 days until it becomes a honey-like texture. The essential tool of the craft is the palm, which is used to heat up the paint to create a thread. Then the paint is floated onto the fabric using a metal rod to create intricate designs. Ghaffur can finish some pieces in 5 days, while more complex designs can take him up to 2 years. The art is said to have come to India from Persia 400 years ago, and it was once popular on bedding and ceremonial clothing. Ghaffur promised his family that he would dedicate his life to his art, and he would try to make it famous throughout the world. Meanwhile, Indian Bidri art is a form of metalworking that hasn't changed in 600 years. The 8-step process involves molten metals, hours of chiseling, and an eye for detail. The secret ingredient? A special soil that can only be found inside a fort in the city of Bidar. After hours of chiseling, hammering, and crafting, workers soak the vase in a hot mud they've created from the soil to give it a signature black color. The artisans say that the soil from the Bidar fort is the only soil in the world that can turn the vases black. A chemical used in the fort's construction gives the soil this special quality. Leading up to the Hindu festival of Diwali, artisans across India produce clay oil lamps called diyas by the thousands. The base is made of a mixture of clay and cow dung, which is prepared in bulk months in advance. The traditional process requires two artisans to work together on a potter's wheel to quickly turn a large chunk of wet clay into hundreds of small lamps. Each one is quickly shaped upward by hand, pinched in to create the bowl, and then cut off at the base with a wire. It's a rhythm they sustain until there's just enough clay left to shape one more. After that, they're laid out to air dry before the artisan fires the diyas in a large wood-burning kiln. Many of these lamps end up broken or discolored, so only a fraction of them are ready to sell in bulk. Most of the lamps burn for about an hour if they aren't refilled, and most get thrown away after just one use. Today, most people prefer to use LEDs and battery-powered lights because they're easier and cleaner to use. In Southeast Asia, the unmistakable sound of the gong has held spiritual significance for centuries. Crafting a gong requires a labor-intensive process that includes hand-beating metal sheet materials, hand-painting intricate patterns, and attaining the perfect tune. Gongs are typically used for commemoration in Buddhism and are often displayed in temples to attract tourists. In China, panjing, or tray scenery, is the art of dwarfing a regular tree to create a perfect miniature representation of nature. In Japan, this is known as bonsai. The practice of creating these tiny trees appeared as far back as the 6th century. The trees are often bent and twisted into shapes, positioned around rocks, or even placed with other trees to create a tiny forest. These techniques require years to master, and one wrong move can ruin the plant. Over in Hawaii, instead of picking a design off the wall of a tattoo shop, traditional tattoos are based on genealogical and personal history, which means that the wearer doesn't get to pick what the design looks like. Instead, the tattoo master chooses the design using their own spirituality to better understand the wearer's journey. World-renowned tattoo master Keone Nunez honors the ancient practice with the traditional process of hand tapping. The ritual has been regarded as a rite of passage for thousands of years. Following a similar technique to Native American horsehair pottery, Vicente Garcia smokes feathers and hair onto clay to create vases. He starts crafting with traditional wheel throwing and then begins a process called burnishing, where he polishes each piece with smooth stones before firing it in a kiln. The process creates unique and unpredictable designs. In Sweden, the dalahäst, or dalahorse, is a centuries-old handicraft that has become the national symbol of Sweden. They're used as toys and religious items, and have even been used as a form of currency. Today, only 2 main factories make them by hand, and they want to keep it that way, to honor the century-old tradition of making the horses and preserve the meaning behind the symbol.